as I mentioned on the show, over the weekend there was an attack on an ICE facility in Tacoma, Washington. This attack on an ICE facility was carried out by an Antifa terrorist. It was a 69-year-old guy who walked up with a rifle, and he had a propane tank, and he tried to blow up a wall of the ICE facility. And well, Ilhan Omar was asked by a reporter from the rebel media whether she would condemn this attempted terror attack on an ICE facility, and here's how it went.
Will you condemn the Antifa attack in Washington over the weekend? It's easy to condemn terrorism. Will you condemn it?
Is it here?
Antifa firebombed a facility in Tacoma over the weekend. It's an ICE facility. Will you condemn them for that? I mean, firebombing a concentration camp is kind of a laudable thing. If it actually is a concentration camp, you must be happy that they did it, no? Are you pleased? Should more people do it? It's easy to say no.
Here, I think this is it.
It's very easy for her to say that she condemns all violence. How do I know that it's very easy? Because AOC did it this morning. So she was asked by the Daily Caller. So AOC's first answer was the same as Ilhan Omar's. She ran away. And so yesterday, AOC was asked over and over whether she condemned the Antifa attack on an ICE facility. And here's what that sounded like. Again, the reporter from the rebel media.
Will you condemn Antifa for the attack in Washington?
We'll be making statements.
It's easy to condemn a terrorist attack.
She's asking.
Will you be condemning Antifa?
We'll be making statements.
They firebombed an American facility. Will you condemn them?
Okay, and total silence from AOC, right? It took her a full 24 hours to come up with, yes, it turns out a terrorist attack is bad. And then the same question was asked to Ayanna Pressley, and the exact same result. So here is Ayanna Pressley asked to condemn the Antifa terrorists, again by the rebel media. No answer.
Really simple question. Will you condemn Antifa for attacking an ICE facility? It's very simple. Will you tell Americans not to attack violently ICE facilities?
He's standing right next to her. I mean, it's not like she can't hear the question.
It would be a very simple thing to say, and
she just keeps walking.
It would go a long way to tell Americans that you're not sympathetic to Antifa.
Okay, and nothing. No answer. None. And then Trump says these people don't like America? Okay, so what do you expect the American people to take away from that? These are very easy answers. If the squad wants to take the lead in this fight, this is an easy fight to make if you are willing to say easy things. But I'm not sure what I'm supposed to take away from the squad when you've got Ayanna Pressley over the weekend suggesting that black people are not truly black unless they agree with her. When you've got Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, blatant anti-Semites. When you've got AOC, who has suggested that we have concentration camps on our border. And when every member of the squad who was asked by a reporter yesterday whether they would condemn an Antifa terror attack on American soil went totally silent. It's very easy. It truly is. If you ask me if I condemn a terror attack, you know how long it takes me to answer? Half a second, because it's very easy. It's supremely simple. This is what Trump wants out of this, and they're giving it directly to him. It's unbelievable. If 2020 turns into a fight between Trump and the squad, and it's just Trump versus the squad, that is the fight that Trump wants, and that's the fight they're giving him. Why? Because they didn't have anything like the political acumen to simply take a backseat and let Nancy Pelosi handle it. They could have just let Nancy Pelosi go out front and say, how dare you attack my members this way? These are duly elected members of Congress who are loyal to the United States. It's nasty to question the loyalty of people who serve in Congress. You can subtweet Ilhan Omar there, who's done it repeatedly. But they couldn't do it. They had to be out in the spotlight. And just like President Trump feels the necessity to be right in the center of the camera lens, these folks feel the necessity to be in the center of the camera lens. And they make a lot of mistakes, and they don't look good, and the American people don't like it very much. They find it incredibly off-putting, as well they should. Privilege. He laughed and remained smiling all the way to his seat. He wished me a good flight. We had shared something. I don't know if it was the same thing for each of us, the same recognition of racialized privilege, but I could live with that polite form of unintelligibility. Now, probably he was laughing, and he thought that you were joking because he thought, you've got to be kidding me. Right? Like that, no one would be that self-serious. Again, have you ever been in an airport? People are insanely rude at airports. It is what they do. Right? People are constantly forming lines to the side at airports and doing rude things. And so if somebody turned to me and there was like a separate line forming and I was in it, they're like, that's the height of white male privilege. I'd be like, like, really? Seriously? It is an airport where people are rude. But apparently, this is the old Adam Carolla line. that if you are black and you're pulled over by a cop unfairly, your immediate response is probably to think, because of the narrative and because of American history, it's because law enforcement is racist. If you're white and you're pulled over by a cop wrongly, your first instinct is to say it's because the guy's a jerk. Now, there are many more jerks than racists in American life. So statistically speaking, it is more likely that the person's a jerk. That's the same thing in this particular case. She says, I found the suited men who refused to fall in line exhilarating and amusing as well as obnoxious. Watching them was like watching a spontaneous play about white male privilege in one act. I appreciated the drama. One or two of them chuckled at their own audacity. She said, the people in my line, almost all white and male themselves, were in turn quizzical and accepting. So hold on a second. They formed a separate line that was largely white and male, and it was next to another line that was basically white and male except for the one black lady. And the other line was the white supremacist line. How do we know it wasn't your line that you were standing? Like, how do we know this? She said, after I watched this scene play out, I filed it away to use as an example in my class. How would my students read this moment? Some would no doubt be enraged by the white female gate agent who let it happen. I would ask why it was easier to be angry with her than with the group of men. Because she didn't recognize or utilize her institutional power. My goodness. My goodness. Okay, and then, good news. There are more airport stories. This continues. As I became more and more frustrated with myself, writes this Yale professor, for avoiding asking my question, I wondered if presumed segregation in business or first class should have been number 47 on Macintosh's list. Macintosh is the creator of white privilege. Just do it, I told myself. Just ask a random white guy how he feels about his privilege. On my next flight, I came close. I was a black woman in the company of mostly white men in seats that allowed for both proximity and separate spaces. The flight attendant brought drinks to everyone around me, but repeatedly forgot my orange juice. Telling myself orange juice is sugar and she might be doing the post-cancer body a favor, I just nodded when she apologized the second time. The third time she walked by without the juice, the white man sitting next to me said to her, "This is incredible. You have brought me 2 drinks in the time you have forgotten to bring her 1. She immediately returned with the juice. I thanked him. He said she isn't suited to her job. I didn't respond. She didn't forget your drinks. She didn't forget you. You are just seated next to no one in this no place. Instead, I just said, she likes you more. So what she wanted to respond was that she was being ignored by the stewardess because she was black, right? She didn't forget you. It's because I'm no one in her eyes. How do you know she's not just a flight attendant? When you are trying to mind read people, you very often end up in the worst places. So instead, she says, I said she just likes you more. He perhaps thought I was speaking about him in particular and blushed. Did he understand I was joking about white male privilege? It didn't seem so, right? Because who jokes about white male privilege? Like, is this all this lady jokes about? Her comedic repertoire needs some work. He brought both hands up to his cheeks as if to hold in the heat of this embarrassing pleasure. Coming or going, he asked, changing the subject. I'm returning from Johannesburg. Really, he said, I was just in Cape Town. Hence your advocacy, I thought ungenerously. Why was that thought in my head? I myself am overdetermined by my race. Is that avoidable? Is that a problem? Had I made the problem, or was I given the problem? Well, you're making a problem now. So far, the guy said nothing offensive, and he's defended you from a stewardess who's not giving you a drink. She says, on the long flight, I didn't bring up white male privilege, jokes, or otherwise again. Instead, we wandered around our recent memories of South Africa and discussed the resort where he stayed and the safari I took. She says, back home, when I mentioned these encounters to my white husband, he was amused. He said, they're just defensive. White fragility, he added with laugh. So the guy's white fragility. He was defending you, and he's still somebody who's suffering from white fragility. Okay, so then we come to the culminating story of this asinine piece in the New York Times Magazine from a Yale professor. Again, quote, I finally got up my nerve to ask a stranger directly about white privilege as I was sitting next to him at the gate. He had initiated our conversation because he was frustrated about yet another delay. We shared that frustration together. Eventually, he asked what I did. I told him I write and teach. Where do you teach? He asked. Yale, I answered. He told me his son wanted to go there, but hadn't been accepted during the early application process. It's tough when you can't play the diversity card, he added. Was he thinking out loud? Were the words just slipping out before he could catch them? Was this the innocence of white privilege? Was he yanking my chain? Was he snapping the white privilege flag in my face? Should I have asked him why he had expectation his son should be admitted early, without delay, without pause, without waiting? Should I have asked how he knew a person of color took his son's seat and not another white son of one of these many white men sitting around us? Well, Yale has an affirmative action program. That's what he's talking about. There's legalized racism at many institutions of higher learning. You want to talk about institutional racism? It is endemic institutional racism to favor people of one race over another race solely on the basis of that race. That is what he is talking about. And he is correct that when you go to Ivy League schools, there's a determined attempt to bring in people of particular races by race, by the administrators at these schools. That is what he is talking about. That does not make him a racist. That means that he is pointing out an obvious fact that has been true since Bakke in the United States. It's been true for literally decades, that if colleges are admitting people on the basis of race, then that means that other peoples are being excluded on the basis of race. Then the guy tried to walk it back, right? He said the Asians are flooding the Ivy League. So he tried to walk it back. So he's not talking about affirmative action. Now, this is where he gets to be racist. Okay, it's not racist to say my son isn't playing the diversity card because he can't, right? It is racist to say the Asians are flooding the Ivy Leagues. That's racist because Asians aren't flooding the Ivy Leagues. Qualified people are flooding the Ivy Leagues, and many of those people happen to be disproportionately Asian. Right? It's actually racist of the administration at Harvard to say we have too many Asians here, we can't allow enough in. That's racist. So it's racist when the guy says the Asians are flooding the Ivy Leagues. But she's happy with this. She goes, perhaps the clarification was intended to make it clear that he wasn't speaking right now about black people and their forms of affirmative action. He had remembered something. He had recalled who was sitting next to him. That did it. I asked, I've been thinking about white male privilege.
Do you think any members of the squad will be reelected? And do you think it's a good thing if they're reelected because they're becoming emblematic of the Democrat Party, which is...
Look, all politics is locally, depends upon whether or not somebody's prepared to run against them. We have somebody who turns out to be perhaps not really a conservative or a Republican, potentially running against AOC. I think Ilhan Omar, by the day, is becoming more and more of a liability. She's doubling down on her anti-Semitism, so I don't know if she's going to last. AOC, although not the sharpest tool in the drawer, has done something quite impressive. Nobody's talking about the establishment Democrats. Nobody's quoting Chuck Schumer or Nancy Pelosi for the last 7 months. Who are they quoting? AOC. They're quoting the squad. That's impressive that somebody who was, bussing tables a year ago is now the voice of the Democrat Party. So I think she's probably going to last a while, but the rabid anti-Semitism and bigotry and the anti-American attitude of Ilhan Omar may be her undoing.